I'm well.
Good, good. Well, it's 5 o'clock, and I think we'll go ahead. It's what time is it, Lowell, in Indonesia? You're muted. There we go.
It's 8 a.m. Friday
8
morning.
a.m. Let's see. Robin, is it 8 a.m. in China?
Where's Robin?
I'm currently 9 a.m.
9 a.m. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Good. Well, glad you're all here. I want to welcome you. Topic for the meeting tonight is white fragility. And there'll be some key terms that you're going to want to make a note of, and they will be posted on Facebook, but just kind of look for them as we talk about it. And the first one I want to mention is white superiority, and then a term called moral predicament. And also, we'll be looking at racially based advantages / white. And then another phrase, racially off balance. And then another one called white equilibrium. And so there's a number of phrases then that and words that we'll be talking about, and you'll be hearing about more and more as we go along. And as we start this evening, I'd like to ask Greg to make an announcement.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Thursday Conversation Series. The announcement that I have, I'll give you the first clue, actually. It says Yantai University. That's a university in kind of the northeast area of China. And I am currently, hang on a second, I'll show you the second clue. Everybody see that?
There we go.
There we go. I am currently teaching a law class in China, and that's one of the things I do, international lecturing, and they are third-year law school students in Yantai, China, and they are going to be joining us next week. Great. It's a couple of sessions, and there's 80 plus of them. That is just a screenshot of a few of them. And we are meeting every evening, except for Sundays, through the month of November, teaching a couple of criminal justice courses. And it is a great opportunity for us in our conversations, and it's a great opportunity for them as students that have the opportunity to come here and study, to talk about, or at least watch and observe us talk about the issues of race in America. So they will be joining us in next week for about 30 minutes, all 80 or so of them, and then they'll be joining us later on in a subsequent session. So just wanted to present that to you. And then the last thing I wanted to say is, well, actually, let me show you one other thing. If you're curious of where that is, they are across our ocean, about 5,610 miles. And again, Yantai, it's also an ocean city, seaside city in China. And they, again, are law school students, and they all aspire to be lawyers, prosecutors, judges, who knows what, teachers, a lot of different things. So the last thing I was going to say, I wanted to welcome my friend who's visiting from Yantai. He is an English major. He is a fourth year, and he will be graduating in the spring of 2021, and he's with us tonight. Robin, say hello. He's under my name because I gave him my login. So he's somewhere there. Are you there, Robin?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
Good evening.
All the way.
So I'm currently preparing my postgraduate entrance examination. So I've been asked by Greg, Mr. Greg, our lovely Greg, several times to attend this meeting, so I'm here tonight. So it's my 9 a.m. In China. So I'm really, I'm really looking forward to what we're going to discuss tonight. So yeah.
Thank you, Robin. Robin is one of those students. He's never been a student of mine. I was lecturing maybe 4 years ago now, or 3 years ago, Robin, in the classroom with 100 and some law students. And there was this young man that walked in and went to the back and sat there and was kind of reading and doodling and listening to me speak. And then one of the students and Robin invited me to lunch, and he was just interested in seeing a Westerner and listening to Western thought and I think practicing his English. So it was nice, and we've been friends ever since. And he's been to the United States for a summer for a, what do you call that program, Robin?
Work and travel.
Work and travel program.
Yes.
And I recall you had an interesting story about what happened to you there, which deals with what you were talking about.
Right. So my very first interaction with Americans is not so great. So my immediate boss, she's a lady in her 50s, and she's I don't know if she's just being bad to all, but she's being very demanding and just demanding with me. So I have tolerated with her for about half a month. No, for about 1 month and a half. And I finally talked to HR and got myself transferred in another department, which
Good.
is a catering department. Yep.
What state was that you were working for that summer?
You mean my job?
What state were you in?
Oh, state. Missouri, Branson, Missouri.
Okay, yeah. I remember you were telling me that story about how you were treated. They treated you quite badly, but it's hard to find good bosses.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Robin. We're glad you're here, and
Thank you.
we welcome you. Delighted you're here. And anytime you want to contribute something to the discussion, just speak up. Raise your hand and speak up. Okay.
Okay.
I'd like to thank you, Greg. I'd like to start this evening. Let me tell you a little story. When I was about 9 years old, I had a pen pal, and he was born in Belfast, Ireland, and that's where he lived when we were pen pals. And so we exchanged some letters for a while, and then it kind of faded away. And but I always remembered him. And so a few weeks ago, we were out, and there was a letter that somebody had sent to my church. And so Adair came and she said, "You've got a letter from Ireland." And so I thought, I don't know anybody in Ireland, but I remembered that, oh yeah, I had a pen pal. So I opened the letter, and it was from him. And so he and his family had, he said, in their garden in Belfast, had a conversation about all of these wondrous things we have, like the internet and phones and all of that. And he said, well, he said, in the old days, we used to write letters. And he said, I had this friend in Klamath Falls, Oregon. His name was Fred Hurd. And he said, we were pen pals. And so his daughter went and checked, looked me up on Wikipedia and found the biography. And so she got the address and brought it back to her dad and suggested that he write me a letter. And so he did. And that was the letter that was underneath all these papers, since the office is closed and people had been piling on top of the letter. And so I wrote to him. And so we've exchanged several letters now, and he's on email. He has a Facebook page, and part of that, since it happened, I suggested we Zoom at some point, and he said he'd had some experience of that in Canada with his daughter, some other relatives that are there. But one of the things that he mentioned was our election, And he said, the way he put it was he hoped it turned out the way I would want. And so, as I was thinking about that, and think about when I used to, years ago, I taught high school social studies, history, and everything. And of course, you didn't get partisan and political in the classroom, but you couldn't ignore the fact that there was an election. And so the kids wanted to talk about it, and we did. I never disclosed who I supported or anything like that, but we did talk about it. And so as Greg and Lori and I were working on this conversation, we decided that to ignore the general election that we just concluded would be like ignoring the elephant in the room. And it'd be difficult to ignore it. And one of the things in this conversation that we've been having, and this is our 8th one, we've been very nonpartisan because we know there are people of different political persuasions in our group. And so we don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable because, that we might have different views. But both parties have discussed racism in the campaign and what's been described as the most important election of our time in our history, actually. So keeping that in mind, that there are all political persuasions in our group, I'd like to pose a question as we start out, because make no mistake about it, it does impact what we're talking about in all of these conversations. So I'd like to ask, and we'll just do a general thing for about 7 or 8 minutes, and we'll keep everybody here on the screen. What differences do you think that the election will have on racism? And we don't know who the president-elect is yet, and so we don't have an answer on that. But considering the election and what's been going on, what difference do you think this election will have on racism? So open discussion now.
All are muted, so go ahead and unmute yourselves and feel free to just pop in.
Fred, you used the past tense of the verb. It doesn't feel very past tense. I also listened to somebody in Georgia, a young black man, I didn't get his name, who I think put it pretty succinctly. He said to the person interviewing him, "We used to pick cotton, now we pick presidents."
Ooh.
Right.
We used to pick what?
Pick cotton, now we pick presidents.
That's very powerful.
Yeah, it is.
Can I point out,
Galen?
in Indonesia, there are over 300 individual cultures, and that means 300 races, essentially. A year and a half ago, they had a bitter presidential campaign, and then they had the vote. And now they're laughing at America because with 6,000 islands to bring the votes in, they did it in one day, by canoe, by horseback, by swimming, and the votes were counted, and the president was announced the next day. And here's America swimming in vote counts. And it's a racial thing. It really is a racial thing.
Lowell, you voted in Oregon, didn't you, even though you're in Indonesia?
No, I voted in the state of Washington.
In the state of Washington, but they have mail-in.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect.
Yeah, weeks ago you told me that you voted. So yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And same in Oregon, it was very, very smooth. Let's see, Galen, you had your hand up, and then Rich and Janice.
Yes, I think that the difference that this election is going to make in our racial discussion is going to be pretty stark, because one side denies that there is racism and the other side admits that there is, and there's systemic racism, and has been actively being inclusive and being more attentive, I think, to minority groups and people of color. So I think we're going to see, I hope we will see a large difference.
Thank you, Galen. Who'd like to speak next? Oh, Rich and Janice.
Yeah, I have just comment, very simple, a couple of words. I would say the difference would be a wide open, two subjects, empathy and true love for the indigenous peoples, minorities, and the brown people, Hispanics. That would be the big difference, especially the word of love, Love.
And I just have noticed with the red and blue map that we're seeing all the time on the news, how widely divided we are, how widely divided we are.
Thank you. Eli?
Yeah, just to piggyback off of what Rich and Janice were saying, it's interesting to me because I've grown up at the end of the Clinton administration, all the way through the Bush administration, then through Obama's, and now through 4 years of Trump's. And my family has always been very outwardly one way or the other. And I've lived in a place where it's been generally back and forth. I mean, it's a small town, it's very neutral, but I have noticed definitely just in talking with everyone, in choosing not to talk with some of people in my circle about things like this, just the divisiveness and what seems to be things that shouldn't be political, like the topic that we have in these conversations about race, and how everything has kind of turned into something political that has to have such a divisive side. You're on or you're not, and it's a poison, this divisiveness that has been poured into our country, I feel. And race, I think, is obviously a very sensitive topic for a lot of Americans, and so it only lends to that divisiveness that is being spread throughout the country. And so I think this election in particular is so important because of not only the divisiveness, but the fact that everything has turned into more than just politics with this election. It really has grown into so many more than just like economic issues or anything like that, but moral issues, racial issues, how the government or state, local, presidential even function in a lot of ways. And so it's just it's really a sight to behold, I guess. Even I can tell that with only being 20 years or 26 years old.
Thank you, Eli. Caprice and then Neil.
And
So
we also have Jackie that wants to say something too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay.
Caprice, go ahead.
Okay, so this is Caprice. I think that what happens in the racial front depends upon who is elected. I feel if one candidate is elected, that it's going to continue with a lot of protests for social justice, the way it has been. I think if another candidate comes in, it's not done. There is a lot of work that has to happen, but I feel that it's going to have an opportunity to have the conversations and figure out ways to build these bridges that we've been trying to do in these series.
Okay, thank you, Caprice. Neil and then Jackie.
Well, I think regardless of what your feelings, whether you want to ignore it or what you want to talk about it, this election cycle certainly has brought the subject up that everybody is aware of. What the viewpoints vary differently, but it's somebody's let the genie out of the bottle and you can't put it back. Or another way to say it, the toothpaste is out of the tube.
Thank you. Jackie?
When I reflect on the last 4 years, I believe that even though it pains me, and it's very, very difficult to have to live with. I believe that what has happened is the blanket can take uncovered of what's really underneath and what really is America. We have this myth that we're this country of great opportunity for everyone, and that, you know, all you have to do is work hard, and that you will have equal opportunity, and that is not true. And so what this election, and even this one, has revealed to me, and I'm a believer, it has revealed to me that the religious right has used the excuse of abortion, anti-abortion, or pro-life as an excuse to vote for very racist candidates under the guise that, oh, but this is our one issue. Well, the issue wasn't that issue this time, because they got their Supreme Court justice. So there's absolutely no excuse for what the religious right has allowed. And so, yeah, yeah, I can't say anything else.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Any last question, Greg?
Well, I just think Jackie is very powerful. I think Adair had something.
Oh, let's see, Dare.
Yeah, I think that when the election is over, no matter who wins, that when people start analyzing the vote, they're going, as an example, the Cubans in Florida, they have found their voice, and they made a difference in Florida. And I think in Georgia, with all of the work on Get Out the Vote, the Blacks have found a voice there. And I think that when they look at what they were able to accomplish, whether Georgia goes the way they want it to or not, they've made a real impact by working hard and getting out the vote. And they have made it, I don't, like one of you said, the genie is out of the bottle. They know that they can impact. So it's going to empower them to speak up more. And the same with the some of the other, where they see the races where the political races, not the, they will, and see how successful minorities have been in some positions. I think that's just going to push them forward and keep the non-white races and the indigenous people, keep them going, working harder. I think it's given them some energy.
Thank you, Adair. One last comment. Okay, Khalid.
Hey guys, so I listen to everyone. I'm from Florida. Obviously I'm a minority. I'm an immigrant. I came to the States 20-something years ago at the age of 17. And to go back to the question, which was, where do we see racism with the forecasting of what's going to happen? I think there's two sides to the story right now. The current administration, unless they can bridge and acknowledge the fact that there is racism and make an attempt to bring people together, I think that's going to slowly shift it to the direction that we want. Unlike the other administration, which is the Democratic Party and Joe Biden, and I think his message has been consistently, we need to bring America back and undivide the American people. So, it goes back to also exposure and education. I think if, in small communities where there's predominantly one race, either white, Black, minorities, immigrants, I think one of the key to accepting differences is education. Me being in South Florida, it's a melting pot. we have the Cubans, we have the the Caribbeans, you have the white blacks, and it has not been polarized as much as compared to maybe a small white community in the Midwest or in South Dakota or North Dakota, where if they don't see differences and accept differences, I think we have a difficult path ahead. And I think it's really up to our president, whoever is elected, to show that, hey, you know what, it's okay to have differences, but it's not okay to hate based on the differences.
Thank you, Khalid. I appreciate that. Khalid, would you tell where you immigrated from?
Sure, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, okay.
But my background, my heritage is Indian. And I'm Muslim. My dad is Muslim and my mom is Hindu. And I went to an Anglican high school back in Trinidad. So I'm a melting pot. I have a little bit of
Father Fred, Bobby would like to make a comment.
Oh, Bobby? Yes, Bobby.
Yes, I am a strong believer in journalism, but as I have spent so much time looking at a blue and red map, I have been struck by how much words matter and how we are painted as if we are one thing or another. And we hear it again and again and again. Oh, it's a blue state, so we expect this. Oh, it's a red state, so we expect that. And then they get closer and they see the, ooh, here's a pocket of red and a blue. And I would like to see on my wish list as we move forward is to find a more sophisticated and nuanced way to talk about how people feel about this. And I know it's a win-lose setup. And so that's why we have the red, we're the reds or the blues, but there was a lot of talk about, oh, this percent of, and then fill in whatever non-white minority you wanted, of African Americans, this many people voted for Trump, this percent, and it's like, how could they do that? How could they do that? It's like as if all minorities are just one thing. And it just really reminded me with all that language, the language that we're talking about in these sessions, where we're saying that white people think of themselves as just like, I'm a person. I don't have to think of myself as like, why did all these white people do this? But white people do that with other groups of people. I've been discouraged the last few days. And I really don't know an easy way out, but I think it has to do with really working and thinking about the words we use.
Thank you, Bobby. That's a really profound statement. Let me close this section by saying that I'm thinking about when I first ran for public office, and some of you know I was in the legislature for about 15 years, and I was in Governor Tia's cabinet. I'm a Democrat. Governor Tia was a Republican, and we got along very, very well. He's one of the best bosses I ever had. But let me just say that in 1968, there was a 28-year-old guy down in Klamath Falls, which is one of the more conservative areas in our state. And so I decided I was going to run for the legislature, and we didn't have any money. Nobody would give us any money because I certainly wasn't going to beat the chair of the Ways and Means Committee and he was a potential Speaker of the House. So we went out and went door to door, and I didn't know about walking lists then. I didn't know that Bobby was a 2 and Janet was a 3 and Adair was a 1, and we didn't do that. We just went to every door. I had no clue about what party you were a member of. And so we did that, and there were 2 counties. And my opponent said, well, that kid, he was people were telling him that kid isn't going to win. Don't worry about it. And so he didn't. And Adair and I put $10,000 together, and that was our campaign for the whole, for 2-county district. And we were afraid people would start to say they're trying to buy the election. And so I think about that because in a district not too far from here that the election just concluded over in Bend, which was part of my Senate district, they spent $1 million this year. And so we went door to door, and Lake County, which is a rural agricultural area next to where I grew up, we went over there too, and we went door to door, and they totally ignored, my opponent ignored Lake County because he knew we wouldn't do anything with it. Well, what happened, my grandfather was a Baptist preacher, and he was over there in his early years, and he baptized people and buried them and married them and all sorts of things. All these people came back and they remembered him, and they voted for me. And so in the end, when the election came along, I carried Lake County, and I won in Klamath, but only won the election by 74 votes. And and we went to Republican districts and Democratic districts. And so I quite hear you when you talk about red and blue and all of this. It is a convenient journalism tool, and I taught journalism. So I believe in our free press and everything, but it was a tool for them, but it's become a description for us that we're red or blue. And I think that has really pulled us apart. And so that's kind of where we are. Great discussion, you guys. Great job. I'm proud of you. And we'll keep.
Pop in for just
what?
Can I pop in for just?
Sure, Lori, please.
Yeah, you just wrapped that up beautifully, but I want to pop in because Becky wants to make a quick comment. Becky,
Sure, Becky, go for it.
Well, I was just chatting. I was putting it in the chat, but Fred, what you said is very appropriate. One of the things that I noticed is that how many times they're saying that the polls got it wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. So just pulling off that with the intentional discussions that we've been having in different circles, I think the most important thing is not, coming in as a group and speaking but getting a chance to listen to. We have to learn how to listen, and we have to give people a chance to explain how they feel and why they feel. And that is what will bring us together, which is the whole point of why I think this can turn out to be something good.
I agree with you. Yeah, good job, Becky. Good. Okay, let's move on now. Gregory.
Yes, Father Fred. Let me. I can't help but take a little bit of this with me in my segue, but I want to read what Carol wrote in the chat here. It says that it might not happen in my lifetime, but I still hope people learn that race is a myth. As a kid, including biology class, I was taught that race was scientific. I assume you mean biological. Much later, I learned the concept was invented and created when powerful tobacco farmers wanted to justify capturing and imprisoning people brought from Africa. And that is part of the story that we have. And as we have learned in our conversations, we take our history with us, whether we like it or not. We bring our history with us. We also have a misinformed version of history, such as that example. And to the question of how the election is going to help or impact race relations, I think, in this country, I would say that the toothpaste is definitely out of the tube, and I'm hoping it's completely out of the tube, because I'm hoping that this is finally the moment. This is finally the woke. This is finally the awakening that change will happen. If there is no change in the federal leadership, it will become, it will be a perhaps difficult challenge. However, the motivation to do something is going to be very urgent because it's going to become more inflamed and more obvious. If we have a change in leadership, I think we'll find open arms to continue the work, but the urgency may not be there. So we've got to make sure that we keep it moving forward, and that the work that we're doing and other work that needs to be done needs to continue, in any case. And this should be the moment. This has got to finally be that moment to where we reckon back and we correct the history, and that we actually make real change this time, because it's screaming for it. So I just kind of brought that with us, and we bring our histories with us. We also bring our racism with us. We bring our racism with us. And this topic this week, this conversation is about, it is white fragility. And we've talked about white fragility in a lot of different kind of views. And today we're talking about it where it's a reaction that can be very disruptive. It can be a form of bullying. It can actually be something that's intentional. It can be a reaction that we have to just, I don't want to talk about this anymore. Being that we kind of open the door a little bit for a little bit edge on the political world, I've just got to mention one thing, and that one example of white fragility that was so obvious was he's the current chief of staff, Mark Meadows, and how he used racism to make a point in Congress. And he was immediately called out on that. And the reaction that you saw after being called out is classic white fragility, defensiveness, and claiming that I am colorblind, man. I am not a racist. I've got friends that are Black. I have relatives that are interracial. That was his form of white fragility. And it was being what we know now, and how we are getting this new self-awareness in racism. It's embarrassing that we had someone react that way. And the stunt that he tried to pull to make a point was clearly racist. And so it fits our conversation tonight, because we're looking at how white fragility really can be a really bad reaction. It can be a really negative reaction. It can be an intentional or unintentional reaction that borders on and sometimes is intentional bullying of other people, or it's a wall you put up because I don't want to talk about it and I'm not that way. And it's because we get threatened about who we are and what our system as white people. I'm really talking about as white people. Let's see if I can go back and get our PowerPoint up here, because I want you to look at something. And that is this here. This is the chart that, white fragility can be rage. We have a response. We have a reaction when people question our assumptions about race. And this is Robin DiAngelo's work on this particular topic, where it's white fragility. And the chart shows our assumptions and then the reactions that we sometimes see or we feel in ourselves or others. And things like, my assumption is I am void of racism. And if somebody tries to say the opposite, then, I feel accused. And crying is a very, Robin mentions that it's a very common reaction of white fragility, is a response of just breaking down and crying and saying, I'm not racist. And, and it's just, and that changes the subject, doesn't it? Nobody likes to see somebody crying. It's like, oh, gee, we obviously stepped on a nerve there. And it can be a form, though, of a reaction, a form of white fragility, to where we get an emotional reaction to try to stop the conversation, to try to change the view of myself or of others, or to reframe an action that we just took, such as Mr. Meadows, for example. So I put this up for you to look at, think about what I said, and I'd like to open it up just for a general discussion about your thoughts about white fragility in this frame.
And again, everyone is muted. So if you want to say something, Eli, you've got your hand up. So go ahead and start in, please.
Yeah. When I look at this chart of specifically looking at the behaviors, these are all defensive reactions that, as white people being called out for doing or saying something that can come off as racist or insensitive or bigoted. what I really enjoyed learning the other day about this topic is a lot of it has to do with the language in which somebody not only uses when they use that racist act or saying, but the language used when accused or called out for doing or saying those things. For instance, saying, hey, that's racist, or that's, you know, you're being kind of racist like that, versus saying something that kind of separates you from the act, which actually makes the bridge a little easier to cross and connect, saying, hey, what you just said or what you just did is kind of racist versus you are racist for doing it. And that way it gives the opportunity for the person who did that racist thing or said that racist thing to say, you know, to their the white fragility is to automatically go, oh, that means you're calling me a racist. Well, I'm not racist, but it gives the opportunity of saying, oh, that thing I did was racist. I'm sorry, that's not me. I apologize, and then be able to move from there. And so the wonderful thing about that is, like, these are the ways that people can react, but we can use tools to help them react in a way that's more comprehensive and contextual of what's going on.
Very well said, Eli. I
Thank
like
you.
that. And I think you're right. We need to be able to, I mean, figure out ways to approach people or to respond to people in a way that helps them deal with their white fragility response. Or we have the tools to respond to their response. Just like the Meadows case is just so obvious to me that it's, you know, how could they have handled that in a way that brought out the real truth, which was kind of impossible in a political environment there, but I'm sure they had discussions later. Other comments, reactions to this chart?
Lowell?
I would like, yes. I feel left out of this conversation because I've been gone from America for nearly 10 years. And where I live now, I'm the one white crayon in a 128 box of Crayolas. And I'm in a totally different configuration. Racism, anything that distinguishes people down here is based on religion, not necessarily on race, as of course it comes up. But I feel left out of this conversation because I guess maybe I'm no longer an American. I don't know. I don't think like that.
So what do you think like, Lowell?
I treat the man out here sweeping my street every morning with a broom and a big dustpan. I treat him as better than me. I talk to him. Sometimes I share a piece of bread or whatever I have left over. I treat people better than I would want to be treated. And the payoff is great. The payoff. I have brown people of all shades of brown who protect me if I get in trouble. And I don't know. Am I a racist? I don't know. I just don't know. I hope not.
That's interesting. That you would even ask that question. But Greg?
I think I have a comment. So, you know, he's Lowell, I guess his name is.
Mm-hmm.
It's seeing it on a flip side, right? So now he is in the group with the majority,
Mm-hmm.
right, Lowell, and you're a minority, and you're seeing it maybe from a different perspective, but from the perspective that we may see it in the United States of minorities. But what I go back to what I said early on, if you're educated and you have an open mind, I think that helps a lot. So the fact that the guy's sweeping and you're receptive and open to, you know, having a conversation and facilitating dialogue, I think that's being open-minded, and I think that's important that's the first step I think we need to have to overcome. You know, education goes a long way to overcome racism and differences.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I don't know how to really respond to your, I mean, your self thought about, am I a racist? I can just say what I am. I didn't think that I was, but I am. And it's because I've got white privilege and I have white supremacy because of the way I was raised and where I was in the, you know, my history comes with me. And I was in a educational system that taught me the wrong history. They taught me, a version of American history that wasn't accurate. And so I've got all that work to do to figure that out. And I've made mistakes. I don't see myself as an intentional racist or to intentionally be prejudiced with someone, but I've fallen and made and done racist things that are maybe out of humor or maybe out of well-intended ideas, such as requiring a college degree for law enforcement candidates today, because I think police should be well educated today with the struggles that they have and the challenges. But that is not intentionally racist, but it can discriminate against people that of color that may not have the opportunity to go to school and have the education that I was afforded as a white guy. So I would just challenge you to think of it, in your history that you bring with you. We bring it with you. Galen.
I wonder, because of just how the world is, if our white supremacy and our privilege follows us no matter where we are. Like in Lowell's case, everybody where he lives wants to be his friend because he's a white man and he's perceived to have some kind of privilege or money or something that people have, some ideas that people have about Americans or white people or something. So I just wonder, when we go to other places in the globe where we are not the racial majority, are we still considered to have privilege and superiority just because other people perceive us that way?
Right.
Maybe Robin or somebody who's lived in other places could address that.
And Neil, I'm going to get to you. Robin, did you have any comment on that you'd want to say on there? He's muted. I don't know if he's trying to unmute.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he's.
Are you talking about me?
Go ahead, Neil.
Okay. Well, I think that this whole subject has come up because somehow we have, in the United States here, have decided that patriotism is aligned with white supremacy, and the American flag sadly has got to be a symbol of white supremacy, which you see going down the road in the back of a 4x4 pickup 14 feet off the ground with a huge flag in the back of it. The more American flags that you see, the more I am of the opinion that they're shown by majority of very white supremacists, and that has brought the racism straight home all the time. And it's really very dismaying to see that our flag has become the symbol of white racism or white supremacy.
I'd like to add something to that. Today we were videoing our service for this Sunday, and somebody thought, should we bring the American flag in because it's Veterans Day? And I said, no. They sort of looked at me and I said, I believe in separation of church and state. and we're not going to do that. And so that was the end of it. But I think what's happened is that somebody mentioned that Mississippi had a measure on its ballot this week. And what they were doing was choosing a new state flag. And you may recall a few months or maybe a year ago when the discussion came up about the Confederate flag that was a part of their state flag in Mississippi. And like in the state of Oregon, we have a row of state flags, and Mississippi's was banned. And so that was taken down, and they adopted in the election this week a new state flag with a magnolia on it. And so they changed. That's Mississippi. And I think on the American flag somehow it's gotten to be a political statement, kind of like if you're red or you're blue. And I'm not sure that's healthy.
Jackie, did you have a comment?
Oh, yes, I did. And the thoughts probably changed several times, but I think I wanted to go back and talk about being a racist. Ibram X. Kendi, who wrote the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, took the word and turned it around. And rather than being a noun, it's, racist actions. And so when you support racist policies and practices, whether you're the most liberal person there is, if you support those racist policies and practices, you are supporting racism. Therefore, by default, you're being racist in that moment. No one is constantly a racist unless you choose to be, but you can be without knowing, you may not consider yourself a racist, but if you allow what has happened for the last 4 years to continue, or you allow people in your family to say things that are so untrue, or, out of ignorance, and you don't challenge, you don't speak up in a situation in a meeting where there's an opportunity for people to have a seat at the table, you don't speak up. If you don't speak up when you know people are being excluded, you're acting racist in that moment.
Yeah.
Agreed, Jackie. Thank you. That's excellent. Excellent. And Carol had mentioned in chat that to become anti-racist, it seems like it's probably a lifelong process, or at least many, many years. And she asked the question, what do other people think? I would agree. Galen?
I wanted to go back for just a second to what Fred was talking about the flag, because that's a burr under my saddle right now, is that the flag has been hijacked by a political party. And I am not that political party, but I am a patriot. I love my country. And in the past, I have always made it a point to fly my flag on holidays and things like that when it was appropriate. And now I've moved to a new neighborhood, and I'm afraid to fly my flag because I'm afraid it will give people a false impression about who I am. Mm-hmm. And that irritates the snot out of me. I just want to say thank you.
You remember when the Rajneeshis were in Oregon? They took over the town of Antelope over in Eastern Oregon by an elective process. And I was the president of the Senate when they were here, and I was in the first state police car to drive through Rajneeshpuram, which was essentially a ranch that they had bought. And they were here for several years, and they tried to poison the U.S. attorney, and there were some bomb threats against the chief of staff of the governor, they were a pretty formidable group of people. The Bhagwan came from India, and then they recruited some of the best minds, and I met a lot of them. And they were top-notch lawyers, and they made a statement here. One of the things they did, they wore red clothing, and that's how you could always identify them. The interesting thing about Oregonians, they stopped wearing red. And when the Rajneeshis left, and some of them were in jail and some of them were deported and that sort of thing, then all of a sudden, slowly, Oregonians started wearing red again. And you know, it's kind of like what Galen was talking about in terms of the flag. You know, you can take something, in this case, a piece of red cloth that's made into a shirt, and you stop wearing it because it's a statement about something. And then she was talking about the flag, but it doesn't take much, and it can be any kind of a form that can become a symbol. And that's what happened with the Mississippi flag. The Confederate flag was a symbol. And now today I smiled when I saw a picture of their new flag, which is a nice, beautiful magnolia blossom. And, you know, and I'm sure the flag will now be raised on the grounds of the Oregon State Capitol.
Yeah. Just a footnote, and I'm going to have to give the baton back to Fred, but a footnote on the Rajneesh Param investigation. I was part of the investigators involved in that with the state police, and that incident where they poisoned a city to overcome an election was the first bioterrorism incident in the United States. It was in Dallas, Oregon. Or the Dalles, Oregon, excuse me.
The Dalles, yeah.
I've got to go. I'm sorry I have to leave early, but I'm heading to China now to go do my law class at Yantai, and my double, Robin, who's using my name today, is going to continue, I hope. Robin, it's so good to see you all the way from Yantai. Please come back. And I hope this is your English and your
I'm so sorry.
We will have walk next week for the last half hour. And keep in mind, it is a wonderful opportunity for them to see and hear Western thinking and Western ideas as we invite them in, and they can sit in and watch our discussions just like Robin is now. So thank you all.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you.
Got to bounce, and I'm going to Zoom to China.
Bye-bye. Let me ask you something. Can you step out of your body and see yourself in racial terms? Think about that. NPR's Don Ganya, it says a remarkable preponderance of white Americans believe that white Americans now believe that they also experience racial prejudice. An NPR poll says a majority of whites believe that discrimination against whites exists in America today. So, do you believe, as one person in the poll suggested, if you apply for a job, blacks get the first crack at it?
If you want to say anything, unmute yourselves and just pop in.
In the survey, more than half of the whites, 55%, say that they believe there is discrimination against white people today in our society. Still, and this is the big still in capital letters, a majority of whites believe that while discrimination exists today, a much smaller percentage have experienced it. So the question is, oh yeah, it's out there. Now, I haven't experienced that, but it's out there, I know it is. And so that's a question. Now, I'm active on Facebook and have many friends. And when someone does friend me, I always look at their profile, and particularly what they say about social issues. I'm not so interested in their religion, if any, or if they have any, or their political party, but I do care about where they are on the question of race, on the poor, the homeless, science, education, and a number of other things along those lines. When they discuss racial inequality and demonstrations and violence, I always look very carefully at my potential friend to see if they recognize that whites might have had something to do with that or a part in bringing us to where we are today. And that maybe, just maybe, that all started in 1619 when the first slaves came to our shores. I also want to know if my potential friend is interested in confronting the issue head on, even at the expense of being uncomfortable. And maybe not just somewhat uncomfortable, but uncomfortable in a big way. Now, one of the terms that was used in the, when I was mentioning terms earlier, was white equilibrium. And what is that? Well, Greg referred to it a little while ago when he said it's a cocoon of racial comfort, of centrality, of superiority, of entitlement, racial apathy, and total obliviousness, all rooted in the idea that, well, we're good people. We're free of racism. Because good people aren't racists. And good people don't know what racism is because we're colorblind. We as whites are almost never racially off balance. Being racially off balance is so rare that we've never had to build the capacity to sustain the discomfort. Whites find the challenges unbearable and want them to stop. We want them to stop. Blacks, on the other hand, were born into a society that is racially off balance to them, and they've known no other system. The capacity for whites to sustain a challenge to racial positions is limiting, accordingly fragile. The effects of our responses are not fragile. They're quite powerful. And they've used historical and institutional power and control. And this is what Greg was talking about a little while ago. What are those powers? What are those powers? Crying. Like he said, you're going to back off when somebody's crying. You don't want that to happen. Outrage. How dare you suggest that I'm a racist? Argue the point, or outshout you. You hear a lot of that, like on the news shows, when you get people of conflicting opinions and they just start out shouting. And you don't do what I say. My family has means, and I'm just going to withdraw the money that we've always given you. I'm angry at the whatever group, the ABC group, and so we're not going to give to them this year. And this goes on, and we'll revisit this at the end of our conversation. So we're going to do a breakout now, and we're going to what I'd like to have you talk about is, if you are discussed, is at these points, you had nothing to do with being born white. Think about that. You had nothing to do with the fact that you were born white or any other color. White is white prejudice in the white, or where is white prejudice in the white psyche? Where is it? Where is white prejudice in the white psyche? And how do you respond to the points that were raised in the opening of what I just said? So we're going to break out now for about 20 minutes. And we'll come back, we'll come back a little bit before that so we can discuss what you talked about in your small groups, okay? See you there.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
No, we'll go to the small group. We'll go to the small group and then we'll.
I was going to tell him to